The Battle of Varna, often called the Last Crusade, stands as a pivotal moment in the long-standing conflict between Hungary and the Ottoman Turks. Following the Council of Florence in Rome in 1439, where the Christian churches came together and unified, the idea of a crusade was revived. This agreement wasn't just about religious unity. It also included a military commitment. Western powers pledged to provide military aid to Constantinople in its fight against the Ottomans. This renewed enthusiasm for a crusade aimed to generate as much support, funding, and excitement as possible. Hungary was particularly interested in launching a strategic campaign south of the Danube River. When Serbia, which had been serving as a southern buffer for Hungary, fell to the Ottomans in 1439, its leader, George Branković, sought refuge in Hungary. Wallachia, located southeast of Hungary, wasn't a dependable ally against the Ottomans. Hungary was faced with a critical decision: either defeat the Turks and force them to agree to a lasting peace, or establish reliable buffer states to protect its borders. In 1440, despite the Ottomans' unsuccessful siege of Belgrade, and the fact that Hungary didn't send reinforcements, internal conflicts over who should rule Hungary hampered any potential anti-Ottoman efforts. Pope Eugenius IV sent Cardinal Cesarini, a key figure from the Florence Council and the Hussite Wars, to Buda. His mission was to establish peace within Hungary and assemble troops for the crusade. In May, Cardinal Cesarini outlined a strategic plan. The Christian fleet would secure the straits, preventing the Anatolian army from entering Europe. Meanwhile, Christian forces would advance from the Danube River at Nicopolis towards Varna, and then either sail or march to Constantinople or Edirne. The goal was to target Ottoman strongholds in the Balkans and drive out the Turks. While this plan seemed perfect in theory, putting it into practice proved to be quite difficult. The long campaign between 1443 and 1444 showed that the Turks were vulnerable, but logistical problems prevented a decisive victory. In 1444, the Ottomans sought peace, which led to a favorable treaty. However, even though both sides swore oaths to uphold the treaty, Christian military activities continued, anticipating support from the Serbs and Albanians under Skanderbeg. Aware of this, the Ottomans strengthened their defences in the Balkans. Cesarini successfully persuaded the king and other officials to disregard the oaths, claiming that they were invalid because they had been made with non-believers. The united Christian fleet, led by the Venetian commander Aloisio Loredano, set sail in July and reached its designated position by September, ready to confront the Ottomans. On September the 20th, the Christian forces, composed of troops from various regions, including Hungary and Croatia, crossed the Danube River at Orsova, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. Despite hearing about a peace agreement, the Christian army continued its advance, capturing important locations like Kladova and Nicopolis. In these towns, they inflicted heavy damage on the local population, but failed to capture the fortresses because they lacked the necessary siege equipment. Additional forces from Transylvania joined them in Nicopolis, along with 4,000 cavalry led by the Wallachian leader, Vlad Dracul. After consulting a Bulgarian seer who predicted a disastrous outcome, Dracul cautioned the king about their insufficient numbers and suggested a retreat. However, his warning was dismissed. Continuing their campaign, the Christians seized several locations and sent out surrender demands to various Ottoman leaders. Their confidence began to wane as they approached Varna and learned that the entire Ottoman army was about to arrive. The Ottomans, under the leadership of Murad II, quickly organized their defenses. Murad had arranged a truce with another leader, swiftly crossed the straits using Genoese ships, and joined forces in Edirne. From there, they advanced to Varna in just 2 days. The Christian naval forces were unable to stop this maneuver due to several challenges, including the length of the strait, hostile Ottoman artillery, the lack of assistance from the Byzantines, and a major storm that scattered their fleet. By November the 10th, the Christian and Ottoman armies were in close proximity, with the Ottomans surrounding the Christians from the south and west. The Ottomans had a significant advantage due to their larger army. Faced with this difficult situation, the king convened a war council. Two main strategies were proposed. Cardinal Cesarini suggested a defensive approach, recommending that they fortify their position and wait for naval reinforcements. This idea was supported by the Bishop of Eger and the Croatian leader. On the other hand, John Hunyadi advocated for an aggressive strategy, suggesting a surprise attack in open combat. Given their previous successes using this tactic against the Ottomans, the council ultimately sided with Hunyadi's plan. The Christian forces found themselves trapped between the Black Sea, the imposing Frangan Plateau, Lake Varna, and the advancing enemy. John Hunyadi strategically positioned his troops in a crescent shape, stretching about 1,000 steps between Varna and the Frangan Plateau. The right wing of this formation consisted of 500 soldiers divided into 5 groups, led by figures such as Bishop John of Oradea and Cardinal Cesarini. The center of the army was made up of the royal forces, hired soldiers, and 2 contingents of Hungarian nobles. The king, accompanied by his elite guards, which included Hungarian and Polish knights, along with John Hunyadi and the Wallachian horsemen, positioned themselves behind the central forces. On the left, near the lake, Michael Silaki, who was related to Hunyadi by marriage, commanded 5,000 soldiers divided into 5 divisions. At the rear, near the shoreline, a fortified wagon encampment was set up, reinforced with artillery and supervised by 600 Czech and Ruthenian soldiers under Hetman Keka. Facing them, the Ottomans' right division was composed of Sipahis from Rumelia. The center was occupied by Janissaries, Rumelian foot soldiers, and the Sultan's headquarters. The left side featured Akinjis, Sipahis from Anatolia, and Arab mercenaries. Among other units, the battle began shortly after dawn. Ottoman and Arab light horsemen launched an attack on the Croatian ban on the Crusader right flank. The Crusaders were pushed back by the swift and devastating assault of the Ottoman Anatolian cavalry while being bombarded with arrows. The Christian right wing counterattacked, attempting to push back the Turks. The Anatolian cavalry turned around and charged the Crusaders as the Akinjis surrounded the enemy flank. The combat was intense, resulting in the deaths of the bishops from Oradea and Eger, which caused their forces to scatter. The remaining Christian forces on the right flank began to retreat to their defensive lines. The Ottomans then continued the assault, determined to break the Crusader flank. As they approached the wagons, cannons opened fire on the Ottoman offensive. It was only when the Christian right wing employed their firearms that they repelled the Turks, who were then pursued by Cesarini and Talovac. In this early stage, Karajabey, the Beylerbey of Anatolia, was also killed, as the right wing faced challenges but managed to hold its ground. Hunyadi took decisive action. He directed the left wing and the Wallachians to confront the Ottomans' right side. The Crusader cavalry launched a fierce attack supported by Christian mercenary infantry. The initial assault was devastating, and the Wallachian cavalry arrived in support, flanking the Rumelian cavalry. The Ottoman right wing was pushed back significantly as the Crusaders had much more success there. The Wallachian horsemen effectively disrupted the Ottoman right side. At the same time, Hunyadi shifted forces from the center and left to reinforce the right side, which had suffered heavy casualties in the initial onslaught. Meanwhile, the Anatolian army on the Ottoman left continued the assault on the Crusader right flank. However, Hunyadi's reinforcements from the left and center arrived just in time to repel the Ottomans. With the Ottoman right and left wings dispersed, the Christians returned to their positions and awaited further orders from Hunyadi and the king. At this point, the Crusaders appeared to have a significant advantage. The Ottoman forces on both sides were compromised, and their center was retreating in the face of an impending loss. There were even rumors that the Sultan considered abandoning the battle, but an elderly Janissary intervened, insisting that he remain and lead, regardless of the circumstances. This Janissary was later handsomely rewarded for his act. With his most devoted soldiers by his side, the Sultan held his ground. Hunyadi then commanded his troops to regroup, likely anticipating a major onslaught that would decisively defeat the Ottomans and secure a safe return for his forces. Just when victory seemed within the Europeans' grasp, disaster struck. The young king, against Hunyadi's advice, impulsively chose to confront the remaining enemy forces with his guard. It's speculated that eager, young knights around him may have convinced him to make this move, aiming to secure the final victory and the glory that came with it. The king and his knights charged towards the Janissaries and the Sultan. At first, the charge was successful as the knights trampled the first line of defense, completely shattering it. Władysław and his guard even managed to penetrate deep into the Ottoman ranks, getting close to the Sultan's position. However, they were met with fierce resistance from the Janissary elite units near Murad. Amidst the chaos, Władysław was unseated, either because his horse stumbled or because the Janissaries managed to dismount him. A Janissary named Chamza from Moria then beheaded him and hoisted the severed head on his spear. Word of the king's death spread quickly among the Christian forces, particularly as he was noticeably absent on the battlefield. This dealt a significant blow to the Crusaders' morale, providing the Ottomans with an opportunity to turn the tide. At this point, the Turkish cavalry flanks rejoined the battle, allowing the Ottomans to engage across the entire front line. The Ottoman forces bore down on the Christian army with overwhelming force, requiring the latter to resist fiercely. Some accounts suggest that Hunyadi led counter-offensives before eventually retreating as the day drew to a close. Hunyadi's noble retinue managed to slow the Ottomans for a while. However, the Turks seemed unstoppable, advancing towards the Christian position with determination. As the main Crusader positions were violently overrun, remnants of the army retreated, some in a disorganized manner. The casualties were staggering. Estimates vary, but it appears that between 11,000 and 30,000 Christian soldiers were either killed or injured, while Ottoman losses ranged from 8 to 20,000. However, many Christians were captured, some were executed immediately, while others were sold into slavery. 2 days after the battle, Hunyadi, along with Wallachian forces, arrived at the Danube. In Wallachia, Władysław Dracul captured him, holding him hostage either to safeguard against potential Ottoman revenge or to extract a hefty ransom. Facing potential retaliation from Hunyadi's loyal Hungarian allies, Dracul released Hunyadi for a significant payment. By the spring of 1445, as the Ottomans moved toward Belgrade, Hunyadi successfully repelled them using a surprise nighttime raid, a technique frequently employed by Eastern cavalry. Encouraged by this victory, and with support from the Venetians and Vlad Dracul's Wallachians, the Hungarians launched another Danube campaign in 1445, capturing several fortresses. Following Władysław's death, Hungary was left under the rule of a toddler. Władysław the Posthumous, Hunyadi, growing in stature and wealth, became the dominant figure in Hungary. His prowess and influence led to his appointment as Hungary's governor in 1446, and by 1447, the Pope conferred a dukedom upon him. The Crusades' failure left the Ottomans dominant in the Balkans. Another unsuccessful campaign against the Ottomans occurred in 1448. By 1453, Hunyadi agreed to a truce with the Ottomans. In the same year, Constantinople fell to Mehmed II, marking a grim realization that Christian forces might never completely subdue the Ottomans. However, a significant European triumph at Belgrade in 1456 halted the Ottoman advance into Europe for a time. Hungary remained secure until 1526 when, at the Battle of Mohacs, the Ottomans defeated them, leading to Hungary's subjugation for nearly 400 years. This video wouldn't be possible without your support, so please make sure to like, comment and subscribe to the channel so I can post more videos. Thank you for watching and see you on the next one.